So I'd like to welcome all the members of staff at NESA, welcome all of the welcome colleagues from Eskom, colleagues from the ferrochrome industry, and also to welcome everybody who might have joined this platform today. We are here today to discuss. This public hearing is on the Eskom application for the negotiated price agreements with both Glencore-Merafe Crome venture as well as Samancor Crome Limited. We just thought that on this day, we're starting a day on a very sad note, noting that there has been lives lost in the city of Joburg. It's a major disaster that has befell the people of South Africa. We just thought that perhaps it would be useful to just start these proceedings with just a moment of silence, please. Just a minute or so, just to observe a moment of silence for all of the souls that have been lost. Just 1 minute, please. Thanks. Thank you. May their souls rest in peace, and hopefully we'll also, as a country, be able to find a solution so that we prevent recurrence of something similar. Thank you. With that, can we then perhaps come back to the main issue of today, which is a consideration of these applications. My name is Nhlanhla Kumede. I'm the full-time regulator member, primarily responsible for electricity regulation. I'll be the chairperson of this hearing. I would like to introduce the members of the panel to you, and I would like to start with Ms. Nomfundo Maseti, who is the full-time regulator member, primarily responsible for pipe regulation, for pipe gas regulation, who is a member of the ELS. Madam Maseti.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone on the call. Chairperson, I will activate my video later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I'd also like to then also introduce Advocate Nomalanga Sithole, who is the Chief Executive Officer at NESA and is also a member of the ELS. Advocate Sithole. You are on mute, ma'am.
Apologies. Good morning, Chairperson, members and members of the public that are with us on this platform. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Thembani Pukula, who is the chairperson at NESA and is a member of the ELS. Mr. Pukula.
Morning, Chair, and morning, everyone. Thank you for the intro.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce Ms. Precious Sibia, who is a part-time regulator member at NERSA and is also a member of the ELS. Madam Sibia.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mosin Kize, who is a full-time regulator member, primarily responsible for petroleum pipeline regulation and also a member of the ELS. Mr. Kize.
Good morning, Chairperson, fellow panel members, and all the attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. This hearing was duly advertised in the Business Day, the Beeld, Sunday Times, the Star, the Mercury, and the Cape Times, and was also advertised on all NESA social media platforms, as well as the NESA website. And it is held in accordance with the National Energy Regulator Act, in which all affected parties are given an opportunity to submit their views and to present relevant facts and evidence to the energy regulator. The hearing itself is governed by the NESA rules on public hearings, which can be summarized as follows. All parties will be required to make their presentations under oath. Presenters will be allocated 40 minutes each. In this particular case, both the applicant as well as the joint presentation from the Crome industry, both of them will be allocated 40 minutes. Only the members of the panel may ask questions to the presenters. However, members of the public who may wish to ask a question may be able to actually email those questions to walter.mabunda@nesa.org.za, and the panel will decide on how to deal with those questions. Should the presenters consider should the presenters wish to present information they consider to be confidential, the panel will make a ruling on whether to close the hearing or to have the information submitted in writing. The recording of this hearing is done through the NESA system, and the record from that recording is going to be the official record of this meeting. The house rules are simple. We really just going to request that when presenters are presenting to please have their cell phones switched on silent or switched off. We then request that everybody else who is not presenting to please actually mute themselves. We do require that unless we are presenting or requested to do so, please switch off your video at all times. Today we only have two presenters. We only had two requests to present, and that's as indicated to be a presentation from Eskom and a joint presentation from the Crome industry. The first presenter would be Mr. Trevor Mayberg from Eskom. If I may see you, sir. If you can switch on your video. Thank you, Mr. Mayberg. I'm assuming, by the way, that you're going to be the only one presenting today?
I am, yes, Chair. All
right, no, thank you and welcome. I see you. There's a major change. I don't know. Is it the full shave all over? But there's a big change. Thanks. But anyway, would you object to taking an oath or an affirmation?
I have no objection, Chair.
In that case, Mr. Mayberg, if you can just please raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence or the information that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth as you know it?
I do.
Thank you. For the record, please state your name, the organization you are representing, and your designation therein, please.
Trevor Leon Mayberg. I'm representing Eskom Holdings SOC Limited, and I'm the Senior Manager Corporate Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayberg. In that case, I assume that you have the right to present. If you can then maybe fly to presentation. You've got 40 minutes more roundabout for your presentation. And so, yes, if you can switch on your presentation and you can start, you can proceed. Thanks.
Yeah, I will do. I did send it through, and sorry, I was under the impression it would be flighted by yourself. So if you can just give me a second. I only have one slide, which is really the key issues that I am going to cover. And sorry for the delay on this. I just need to find it quickly. Or the other.
Unless, of course, Mr. Mabunda, have you received it?
Chair, perhaps there was a technical glitch somewhere. I don't seem to have it. Maybe if it can be resent quickly, I can write it.
There it is. Jenny is that the same one? Okay, great stuff. No, thanks, Jenny.
All right. Okay, thank you, Chair. I was about to share it. Let me stop that. All right, yeah. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Chair, and to the board of NERSA as well. So I think we're just going to really, give a high-level overview. Of course, Eskom did submit a fairly or comprehensive application in respect of the two organizations, Samancor Crome and the Glencore-Merafe ferrochrome smelters. The points really is going to just be the introduction to it. What's the objectives of the NPA? So it is a little bit of a reflection on what the framework actually tries to achieve. What are the benefits of sustaining the ferrochrome industry? And I'm going to do that at a high level because I suspect the industry is going to provide a lot more detail on their industry. And then just an very high overview of the NPAs. Chair, I think it's possibly just worth noting, of course, NERSA have a complete set of documentation and other supporting documentation, and your public consultation paper included a redacted version given the confidentiality of certain of the aspects. So I, for confidentiality reasons, won't touch on that. So, Chair, really, I think just to kick off. So as indicated, the application that Eskom submitted was for Samancor and for Glencore. For Samancor, our application was included 6 smelters and Glencore was 5. But in terms of the consultation process, 1 is not covered. So I will be only focusing on the 4 Glencore smelters. As you've seen me on previous NPAs, Eskom have been diligent with regard to this, I think, and the industry or Samancor and Glencore can validate. We went through quite a long process to get a landing on what is being presented or was submitted and is being presented. We did do a lot of research with regard to it, and I think at the same time need to express appreciation to the 2 entities for their support in providing information to us to enable us to put the applications in place. The 2 applications are, of course, aligned to the interim long-term framework that was issued by the DMRE a few years ago. Really what it is focused on is to ensure that the electricity-intensive users in South Africa are addressed, and that that a competitive electricity price is actually provided to them because they work in an international arena. The DTIC, of course, have supported this as well, and as part of our documentation, those letters of support were provided. As indicated, so that's really the introduction. As indicated, one of the key objectives is to ensure a globally competitive electricity price. And what is critical with regard to that statement is that our focus was electricity. Our focus did not look at other inefficiencies, at technologies, etc. It says, what is the rest of the world paying for electricity, and how, for a South African smelter to be competitive, what should that applicable price be? Should there be other inefficiencies in any of the 10 smelters that are under discussion now? That is not for electricity to solve. That is for the industry to solve themselves. And I think it's worth just mentioning the one, and it may be a question that's going to come in, that the one smelter in the Glencore-Merafe stable, the Lydenburg smelter, is under care and maintenance. And really, with regard to that, and we're led to believe there are other issues related to that, but that is something that Glencore-Merafe will have to resolve. By including them in the application, there is a risk that they may not start, but it does create a platform or an enabling environment that at least one of the issues is solved, and hopefully provides that opportunity for them to start up and, of course, create the jobs again, create economic value in the country as well, because beneficiation does create a lot more economic value than just exporting our ore. So, the underlying principle, of course, giving this, or proposing this special price, also creates an opportunity for the industry to potentially grow again. And, if we just reflect on what has happened in South Africa with regard to the ferrochrome and the beneficiation of it, is there has been a dramatic decline in South Africa's share of the market. And, where we as a country have approximately 70 to 80% of the world's chrome reserves, our production of ferrochrome has decreased from around 50% historically to less than 30% of the world, and China and India really being the major players now. And this
Mr.
hopefully will
Mabek,
create. Yes,
Mr. Mabek,
yes.
apologies to actually disturb you. I'm not sure whether, because the slides are not moving. Are you still on slide 1?
Yes, so Chair, I only have the one slide, so I'm just talking to the slide.
Oh, you're just talking
yes.
to it. Oh, okay, okay, thanks.
Right. Yeah. So I really am, looking at that. So I think the objective is to create this opportunity, and hopefully the industry will grow. Potentially, let's take Leidenberg as an example, start up again, and there are one or two other smelters around the country that may also, look to start up, and possibly the two companies that we're discussing today, may look at other opportunities of expanding and rather beneficiate instead of South Africa just exporting chrome ore. So moving on to, so what is the benefit of this? So of course, and I have touched on it, there is economic benefit. The estimation of the economic value add is that beneficiation has approximately a 5 times GDP multiplier effect on the economy. There is also, of course, the impact that foreign currency is earned and assists on our balance of payment, etc. And of course, there's taxes, etc. From a job perspective, there's also a multiplier effect. Their suppliers, money going home, in the workers spending that, etc. as well. And the smelters are pretty much located in, areas outside of the main economic hubs in South Africa as well. So it does create that opportunity. From a technical perspective, these smelters are baseload customers, and this does create opportunity and stability in the electricity system, versus, as you are very well aware, your residential, which is high morning peak, low demand, and then high evening peak again. So they create this, and it's through a 24-hour cycle as well. Important to note is that the ferrochrome sector make up a significant portion of Eskom's revenue and sales and revenues at approximately 7% of our base. And of course, as I mentioned, sustains or providing this will sustain direct as well as all the indirect jobs that I referenced. I think, Chair, moving on to the last point then, and I'm happy to take questions. I've just really flown through the bit of the background. So what we are proposing for each of the 10 smelters is a 6-year negotiated pricing agreement. We're hoping the commencement date would be the same, and therefore it terminates all on the same date as well. The base tariff that we are offering is the same to everyone. There will, however, be minor differences depending on load factor. It's not a single tariff. It is a tariff that contains various components, and it all depends on time of use, and hence, as I say, can vary. However, there is a minimum price, which I refer to as the base price. There is also a mechanism to generate an additional amount when times are good. And being a commodity, and if you reflect on it was about 18 months ago, up to 12 months ago, there was quite a boom in the ferrochrome price, and a mechanism has been put in place because, yes, the producers are going to be making extra money at that point, and a mechanism has been in place, put in place, that an additional charge will be levied as the ferrochrome price increases. So we will see benefit for the rest of the consumer base then as well. The escalation factors, we have included a inflation plus a real increase as well to really sort of guard against any cost escalations and neutralize that. The smelters will also then in return provide supplemental and instantaneous reserves in terms of the demand response, for which they will not be compensated, where the current program they are compensated. So this is a trade-off, and it's provided free, and what they are providing is a bit more than they currently do under the standard program. And then there also includes a minimum consumption. So this is to ensure that they don't just follow market trend, market prices and drop down below. And there is that minimum, which is quite a substantial percentage of their base amount. So Chair, those at a high level are the key points. I think maybe just to reiterate, Eskom have done a thorough, interrogation of this. I think the proposal, we believe, balances the needs of the smelter, balances recovering the necessary costs from an Eskom perspective, and hopefully will provide economic value. Just on the last point, the applications do tick all the boxes in terms of the framework, meets all the criteria, etc. And yeah, so hence, Chair, I'm happy to, let me stop at that point and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marbeck. I must admit, I know you guys at Eskom, you tend to come with these very beautiful presentations, which are detailed presentations. So hence I was asking whether your presentation is moving or not. But thank you for the presentation. I'll now invite members to then ask questions on your presentation. But members, remember, matters that are actually protected by way of confidentialities is basically the numbers themselves. The principles can be discussed, but if we can just in public, of course, it's not confidential for you as members of the committee, but in terms of the numbers, we would really appreciate that. They have been applied for, and as previously done, those confidentialities have been granted. So I'd like to then open the platform to members of the ELS. And members of the public, if you've got questions, remember, you can always email those your questions through to walter.mabunda@nersa.org.za. The first question goes to Madam Massetti. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Mr. Makeback, for the presentation. In your presentation, I think you set out nicely the benefits as you see them arising from this arrangement. I would have appreciated risk that are sort of anticipated in relation to this arrangement, this agreement, given the fact that we also have the duration of 6 years. So a lot of things can actually change. And given that duration, I wanted to find out whether Eskom foresee any adverse impact on its revenue or increased risk of recovering more from other customers so as to compensate for any revenue shortfall. I think for us as a regulator, it's very important that we consider, we make sure that there is not going to be any revenue shortfall from Eskom, and of which shortfall then will then result in other customers need to pay a significantly higher tariff. So it's important if you can touch on that. What mechanisms have you put in place or measures that you have put in place? The second thing that I would like to find out is how will this agreement stimulate demand? And if it does, how such demand will be met given the significant supply constraints faced by Eskom, as evidenced by load shedding? How are we going to look into that? Because generally, when you have these types of agreements, where you sort of reduce the price, or put the price at a particular level, you expect to increase the consumption. and also at least some you expand the output, and that will be your general economic benefits arising from it. So in this case, how is that going to be realized given the known supply constraints on the part of Eskom? And just on that very same point, as you would know better, differential pricing is considered beneficial from an economic point of view if it results in output expansion or increased consumption. Will that be the effect here, given this? The last question that I have is on how will Eskom ensure that the tariff covers the cost of supply to these ferrochrome companies and charge a tariff that is above marginal cost so that it can ensure efficient recovery of fixed cost. And this is because I see that the escalation is based on PPI and not necessarily on cost incurred by Eskom for supplying to these companies. So how do we reconcile that and ensure that, yes, there will be efficient recovery of fixed costs and the price will be definitely above the marginal cost, so that we make sure that we also comply with the ERA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Massetti. Mr. Mkhize?
Thank you, Chairperson. I've just got 2 questions, and Mr. Mayberg, thanks for the presentation. One, just your confirmation that all provisions of the interim long-term framework for the NPAs have been complied with. Just that confirmation. And then 2, did you as Eskom embark on any holistic national view in terms of potential for NPAs instead of simple using first come first served approach, a kind of a situation where you see what are the perimeters within which you can function well in terms of the implementation of the this the NPAs. And then just another thing, sorry that I have not included it, is in terms of consultations, with if there was any consultation that you embarked upon, especially with the, I would say the labor movement or other stakeholders that have got that are affected by this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Before I recognize you, Madam Spear, may I just indicate again, I see there is a hand from a valuable stakeholder. As indicated, unfortunately, the questions can only be asked by the members of the panel, who are the members of the electricity subcommittee. Any question from the public or any concerned stakeholder, kindly email it. I kindly send your question to walter.mabunda@nersa.org.za. We really appreciate that. Unfortunately, only the members of the public can ask questions. Only the members of the ELS can ask questions.
Through you, Chair, and I really apologize. I'm so sorry for interrupting, Chairperson. My name is Pagamile Majola. I'm the NUMSA National Spokesperson. The only reason I'm raising my hand, Chairperson, is because NUMSA was supposed to also be afforded an opportunity to address NERSA on this question in support of Glencore's application. And I noted in the beginning when you made your intro, you didn't mention us. And so this is why I am raising my hand. And I would kindly request that you please assist me to resolve that issue, because we did make that clear when we sent our email that NUMSA would like to engage NERSA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. And I think we don't have many presenters today. It's something that perhaps we can accommodate, but as indicated, if you can then maybe just converse again with Mr. Walter Mabunda, who is the chair, who is the secretariat for this committee, and I'm sure a plan can be made so then you can get your opportunity to actually make your presentation. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay, can I now recognize Madam Spear?
Good morning, Chair. Once again, good morning, Trevor. Just to thank you for the presentation, just to acknowledge the fact that at least from an ESCOM perspective, the NPAs are not linked to a commodity, knowing the impact of the previous one that that ESCOM had, the impact it had with regards to the industry itself. That's my first comment. But just to add on what Madam Massetti asked with regards to the pricing issue, the tariff, because of the linking of the tariff with the CPI, escalating it by CPI, how are you planning to mitigate the risk of revenue loss in cases where the CPI is lower than the tariff increase as approved by NESA in the applicable year for the duration of the contract? For me, that is the issue. Thank you very much, Chair. And then the issue of the impact on the community, maybe we need to also look into those things, because there were issues when the other contract with regards to the ferrochrome. Also, just talk through as to say what are the issues that have been secured with the parties concerned with regards to the plight of the employees and also the community. Thank you very much. It was good to see you again, Mr. Mybeck.
Thank you, Madam Spear. Questions from you, Advocate Sithole?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks to Mr. Mybeck for his presentation. Chair, mine, it's just one issue which relates to the current electricity amendment bill, which is under consideration. And I just wanted to find out if ESCOM it would be in a position to reconsider these NPAs should the provisions in the bill, which would now be promulgated into an act, would they amend those NPAs in line with the amendments that would have been in the act that have not yet been anticipated in this current process? Chair, that's just one question that I thought I should ask ESCOM, and whether they are ready to really deal with any changes prior to the expiry of these NPAs. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Madam. Those are the questions to you, Mr. Mybeck. I actually don't have any questions from my side on this one. So yeah, if you can just respond to this. Again, the offer is always stands. You can respond to the questions that you feel comfortable to respond to on a whim. But if you do want to provide any detail, which maybe might not have been included in your application, you can do that in writing within 7 days. So you don't have to respond to all of the questions today, and you can also even provide supplements later as well. But over to you, Mr. Mybeck.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions. I think on an 80-20, I should be able to cover them, but if you do require, we can supplement them in writing. I think, and Chair, I'm not, if you can indulge me, I'm not going to go, per the order of the questions, but I want to just first and foremost, I think, cover the Mr. Mkhize's question with regard to the provisions, and I can confirm, the criteria as set out in the interim long-term framework does require a certain load factor, a certain volume Amongst others, electricity needs to be one of the top 3 cost items. And then there are also, with regard to the solution, needs to adhere to certain aspects as well. And I can confirm, on all 10 of these smelters, they do all meet those criteria, and the proposed solution also does ensure that all those requirements are actually met. So I think just to set that as a background, I think and going on to Mr. Mkhize's second question, which was really the holistic view, and Chair, I think the challenge that, and I use the word intentionally, is ideally, there should not be NPAs in South Africa. Ideally, there should be a price or a tariff that anyone that meets the criteria can actually pull out the tariff book and say, okay, yeah, I meet that, make application, and actually have that. Now, there has been a lot of work done over many, many years, and Eskom have been party to it. It was led, at a point by DMRE. But unfortunately, that has stalled and hasn't gone anywhere. So as a consequence, let's call it the interim measure, and I guess the term interim has been used in the framework as well, was put in place by the DMRE. So what we are having to do is sort of adhere to that. And as you're aware, there's also a short-term framework which has a different objective. So with regard to that, unfortunately, it is who comes knocking on our door, and we then have to really consider that. For information, we have had applications in the past that have not met the criteria, and we have had to turn them away, and we have informed NERSA as required in terms of the framework to report that we had these applications and we declined them on and provided the grounds for that. So I think our take on it is, if you look at the criteria of load factor, volume, call it electricity intensity, sort of one of the major cost factors, I think most of the industries, and let me mention them, ferrochrome and aluminium are 2 of the biggest ones. There's a couple of, and I'm going to use the term rats and mice, still out there that potentially are still going to come looking for NPAs, and that should actually be, pretty much, I think, the end of any long-term applications until such time as they do expire. But hopefully there will be an initiative and driven to actually try and create this energy intensive tariff, for want of a better term, or industry tariff that then meets the needs of these really big users and where the cost of electricity is a large percentage. So Chair, if I could then can move I think back to Ms. Mosetti's various questions, and I guess and I'm I think a lot of the questions almost covered a risk issue, revenue shortfall, load shedding, etc. And risk has two sides. You have the negative, where something can go wrong, and then there's the positive, which is opportunity. And opportunity, is, in terms of risk, is often also deemed it's a positive risk. So where we looked at this, and the framework makes provision for 6 years, but can actually go to 10 years. And I think it is, and I'm pretty sure the industry would have liked a longer term, gives them more certainty. But with providing more certainty to the industry, to use Ms. Mosetti's word, results in risk to the energy supplier, and hence 6 years sort of is the minimum, and it allows us to sort of manage it. Can we forecast accurately over the next 6 years? I'd guess no one can. Can we over 10 years? Even less so. So when we look at what can go wrong, is the cost of electricity supply in South Africa could go increase dramatically. I sincerely hope it doesn't, because it just results in a massive affordability issue for the country. But I would like to think that, all the teams in Eskom, all the research that is done, all the projections on, current plant, on all of the IPP programs that are driven by the IPP office on behalf of the DMRE are factoring in all of these costs. And in our analysis, we have taken a longer term view. The initial couple of years, of course, was driven by the MYPD determination of NERSA. And then beyond that, goes into really all of the underlying, planning, budgeting, etc. of Eskom. So, we do firmly believe the 6 years we have it covered. The tariff has been set at a level that provides sufficient headroom for any risk. The cost of IPPs have all been included. We have not gone and separated and argued, well, this is baseload. No, while it is baseload, we have factored in the costs of the OCGTs, which, as you know, isn't coming at an enormous cost right now. Even the risk mitigation program was all included. All of the other bid window programs also included. So, from a cost perspective, there is sufficient headroom, and I say that with confidence. But as I say, if it isn't, it means the whole country is going to be in a desperate position with affordability on electricity. I think moving on to the second, will it stimulate demand? And it is a very fine balance, and I know everyone's thinking, but if you don't have this, load shedding can be avoided. But I think we need to look at the bigger picture, and I think we have to have faith in all of the interventions that are underway, driven within government and within Eskom as well, to diminish and reduce the levels of load shedding, and hopefully see the end of it sooner than later. The risk we have if we do not sustain current industry, they can close, and that would be catastrophic to the country as well. The job losses, etc. So this tariff, yes, is a slightly flatter tariff. It was sort of put in place really to sustain over a 12-month period, the smelters. And, and I'm sure the two parties, won't mind me mentioning it. The winter tariffs are, at Megaflex are extremely high, and it makes their production costs then, because of the large amount of electricity they consume and the large percentages makes up on their cost base. We do, experience closure, pretty much over, for about a 3-month period, and then they, have to sort of battle, and they do their maintenance, etc. The tariff has been designed that they will hopefully operate through the 12-month period. It will allow maintenance to be done through the year, versus all of them being done at the same time, as well. And projections are, and indications from both parties is there is a likely upward trend in their consumption to really offset any of the sort of rebate that is provided in this negotiated, pricing arrangement. So yes, there is a volume issue but hopefully let's trust the processes that will address the volume. But from a financial perspective, and I think Ms. Musetti, it goes into some of your questions, how are other customers going to be impacted? And you would have noted, we have done calculations that indicate certain of this, let's call it reduction, provided by through this tariff, would be offset by the growth and extra consumption by those smelters. But there's a very critical principle that we also consider, and that is the consideration. It's better to have the smelters in place at a slightly reduced tariff than not have them at all, because if they close, all those fixed costs that they are currently contributing to have to then be covered by other consumers. And we have the same argument and discussion in Eskom is, will they close? I don't know, but our research, and you would have noted in some of the illustrations that we did provide in our application, is the South African smelters are moving to being the marginal smelters, which means when there are bad times or the ferrochrome price drops, those are the first smelters to close. And as indicated, China is one of the major competitors, and if you just have to look at how China does assist their industry, they take a very much a national perspective, and they would rather sustain them. So this is really, I think, designed. Yes, it comes with a little bit of risk, etc. But it is designed to sustain them, for the country. And it's not good press when companies close and leave our shores. It doesn't really bode well. So so I think that is key. So I think that sort of covers the differential pricing. Yes, it is beneficial, and we will hopefully see them increase. And I did reference in my introduction, there are one or two other smelters in the country that are actually idle at the moment, and they hopefully the one has made contact a couple of years ago, but it hasn't gone anywhere. But hopefully that will be a spark to say, hold on, is an opportunity to make us competitive as well, because our tariff design, our offering in terms of this is the same for the industry. So if someone else comes and knocks on the door, they get this deal. Samancor, Glencore-Merafe have got the same deal as well. So there is opportunity for other for growth through other companies, and potentially, and I know the industry will be presenting, and hopefully there are plans to say, hold on, let's rather beneficiate versus having all of these trucks and kilometers of trucks of ore being exported, and let's rather export beneficiated product, and let's possibly stimulate the stainless steel industry, which is the major user of ferrochrome. Yeah, so I think, so Chair, then going off onto, how will Eskom cover the cost? And I think it's pretty much what I've covered. The framework makes provision on how the application needs to be adjudicated. Our model with all of the underlying assumptions and supporting schedules to substantiate the underlying costs issues was all provided to your team as well. And, we do believe there is more than adequate headroom on that. I think, Chair and Ms. Mosetti, hopefully I've covered everything, but I'm happy to, if I've missed something not covered, happy to come back to it. I think, Chair, the next question was with regard to consultation, and I think our process is really, we get an application from from the ferrochrome for Samancor and Glencore-Merafe, and our engagement is really with them to really see how we can balance everything. What is the benefit of it? And I think that there was a question towards the end with regard to the communities and plights of communities. I think these NPAs are designed to sustain the jobs and not see businesses close. And so so will it, to me, that is the benefit. They remain, they continue to employ, money continues to go into the communities. There's a lot of, and the industry must talk about their own initiatives with regard to sourcing and community involvement, etc. But, to me, it's a positive to keep them. And yes, it does create the opportunity to potentially grow as well. The point is, noted with regard to commodity linkages. Yes, there is, we have ensured that it is a standard tariff. The extra charge that I indicated would be driven because the industry their revenue is driven by commodity price. So underline it, there is a trigger that would have to consider that to ensure these extra charges are can be invoiced. But I think key with regard to that and the comment on the escalation is there's a fine line between or not providing certainty and providing certainty. So, what we have done, and the application provides certainty. The industry can look and say, okay, these are my costs. This is what electricity is going to move to, versus, and let me use the word yo-yo increases that, unfortunately, as a country we've experienced, and, as Eskom, our applications, are indicative of that. But I think, I'm hopeful that those, increases that we have seen recently within the Eskom environment was also, let's call it, structural changes in, how supply was, which was always, low cost coal, etc. And I know it's probably an issue that you deliberate and consider on an ongoing basis when the MYPD applications are made. So, I think it is providing that certainty. In the absence of certainty, meeting those requirements of the industry as well, and us trying to sustain probably would, be put in question. Yeah. I think, Chair, with regard to the current bill, I'm not involved in the regulation and the bill, etc. So I cannot comment on this. But I think what is critical to note is, the electricity pricing policy does make provision that approved NPAs will be honoured to the end of the expiry. So, we adhere to whatever the policies are. So, this would be honoured. We have, however, also included that should there be a dramatic change in the whole regulatory environment, that the parties would then have the opportunity. Being Eskom and the smelter, or Samancor and Glencore-Merafe, if there is a major issue that creates significant issues, we would engage to try and resolve it. And if we are unable to resolve it, we could, actually terminate. But I can't comment on the current bill, and I would rather, I think, consult with my regulatory people, and this in particular, just come back to you and indicate whether we do see this as an issue or not. But I'm not aware of it being an issue. So, Chair, I've hopefully answered all of the questions, but I'm happy to hear from the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mabek. Maybe just one parting question from me. I mean, you mentioned the ferrochrome industry in the main, but what about the ferromanganese and the ferrovanadium, all of those that could benefit? Is there any reason why these are not, specifically the ferromanganese? And I mean, that's the direction that, in terms of the green metals, those are the things that we are kind of supporting all of the metals that are required going forward. Any reason why there is no ferromanganese application?
Yeah, so Chair, maybe it goes to was it Mr. Mkhize's point on first come first serve. So there have been discussions, and with a number of the industries. I think what we have indicated. I think some of them are actually just in care and maintenance at the moment. Maybe I used a derogatory term by saying rats and mice. Yeah, they are not the big customers. So we are aware of them. But really, we are not going out to these customers to say, chaps, hey, do you want an NPA? No, we are rather waiting for them, because as Ms. Mosetti raised the issue, is any rebating, etc., can have an impact on other customers. So hence it is a case of waiting for them. There have been discussions with some parties, and we left it with them, but the ferrochrome is the main ferroalloy industry, but the others are there. I think it's a case of wait and see, do they come and apply, but at this point we have no other applications on our desks.
Thank you, Mr. Mabek, and thank you for the detailed responses and for your input. But I guess if you feel, because you've seen the gist of the questions from the members, if perhaps you would not mind to actually supplement, just to assist us when we're making decisions. If there's anything that you feel perhaps can be we can benefit.
Yeah, I have.
Mr. Pukula, you are.
Yeah.
If you can just mute yourself, please.
Yeah.
Mr. Mabek, but if there's any additional information that you feel perhaps could assist us as well in when we make a decision based on the questions asked by the members, we would really appreciate your further input. So you've actually had the gist of the questions by the members. So, but on behalf of NESA, I'd like to thank you for your input. Very short, very concise, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. We will then move on to the second presenter for today. But I'm also still hoping that we'll be able to accommodate NUMSA. If we have a presentation, NUMSA, please forward it to Mr. Mabunda as well, so that at least it can be incorporated and members can have access to that. But we're now moving to the second presenter today. Mr. Mabunda?
Chair, thanks for the opportunity. Whilst we are still on the NUMSA issue, I would like to put it on record, Chair, that it is unfortunate that the requester, what's her name again? Madam Majola, I think.
Ms. Paramila Majola.
Yes. We received the email very late after the closing date, which was on the 31st. Indicating that she would like to participate in our process. There was nowhere in the email whereby it was indicated that she wants to present. It is unfortunate that she is indicating that she made it clear and we did not comply to her request. However, as you already mentioned, Chair, this platform is set up so that we can get input from as many as possible people who are interested in the matter, and we are therefore amenable to including her in the program. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mabunda. So it shall be so. Madam Majola, you will be accommodated. So can we now move on to the next presenter? Who's going to be presenting for the industry, for the Crome industry. Mr. Yapi Fulat, if you don't mind, if you can switch on your camera, or your camera is on. Welcome, sir. Hello. We really appreciate your presence today. It's good that you took time to come and present to us. But before we start, would you object to taking an oath or an affirmation?
Not at all.
In that case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence or the information that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes.
Thank you. For the record, please state your name, the organization you are representing today, and your designation in it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Japi Fullard. I am representing the ferrochrome industry, which includes Glencore, obviously, Merafe, and also Samancor. I'm also the Chief Executive Officer of Glencore Alloys.
Thank you. In that case, you are afforded 40 minutes, I guess, because you are also not just talking for Glencore, but you are talking for the industry. So you've got your 40 minutes. I assume that you're going to make a proper presentation and you've been given rights to present. If you can just maybe fly to presentation and then you can start.
Thank you. I just want to quickly see if I can put it up. I'm using another computer, so I just want to make sure that I can share this.
But we do have your presentation, so in the event that you are struggling, Mr. Mabunda can then flight it for you and drive it for you.
Yes, please. I think.
Mr. Mabunda, can you drive it for him, please?
I'm on it, Chair.
Thank you.
I think while we are doing this, putting up the presentation, Mr. Chairperson, I just also need to mention that we've got a host of our colleagues on the line at various places. And I think it's very important to also note that as I'm going to go through the presentation, that also the presentation by Mr. Meiberg was, really well articulated, and also highlighting, some of, the areas of concern for us as the ferrochrome industry in South Africa. What I will be doing is I will go into a bit of more detail of some of the questions that also came up. So if I can go to the next page, please.
Thank you. And Mr. Mabunda, if you can maybe try to increase that and make it a full screen, so that it at this stage it looks like it's half a screen. Maybe just at the top there. Anyway, please proceed, Mr. Flood.
Thank you. Yeah, I think if you can just click that top right button, I think that will then increase in my view. So if you can just try that. But I mean, we can go. Yeah, I mean, we can go to the, there to the, the next page already. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Mabunda, you seem to be struggling. It's always easier, actually, if you can, Mr. Fuller, if you can share it from your side as a presentation. If you can try that, might be better.
Let me quickly do that again.
Hey, Chair, I'm flighting it, but it seems not to be working. Gerald is assisting on that case.
Yes,
but excuse me, Mr. Chair, is it possible, we're colleagues of Mr. Fullard, is it possible for you to give us permission to share?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mabunda, you can do it.
Everybody have the rights to share, Chair.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
There we go.
Thanks, Jason.
Perfect. Spot on. Lovely, we had to drive with you.
Thank you, as always.
All right. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. So we can then go to the second page. Thanks, that's much better. Thanks, thanks, Jason. I think this slide is very important, and also coming back to some of the questions raised. I'm not going to go through every single detail here, but what is important, obviously, is that we as the ferrochrome industry, we've seen what happened over the last couple of years. As it was also mentioned, three of the South African smelter complexes were either closed or put under care and maintenance, of which one's also part of the Merafe at Glencore area. So, and I mean, it's only because of the challenge that we're facing in industry with regards to the competition out there. So, if you just look at the a total amount of jobs that we do support, I mean 122,000 jobs in terms of ferrochrome production, and what's also quite important to note, and this was also mentioned here by Mr. Myburg, is that plus minus 80% of the world's chrome ore is in South Africa, but yet we don't convert all of that in South Africa, which is actually a big shame. So beneficiation in South Africa, and it's also been highlighted by the presidency, is a critical component, and we believe it's critical that we still convert in South Africa, because in that itself is where the job creation lies. If you just then look at what's our contribution to the GDP, it's 62 billion to the GDP. But I think what's also important in this slide is that from the 5.4 million tons of ferrochrome capacity, so that means we've got in the whole of South Africa, we've got 5.4 million tons of capacity, but we're only converting just over 3 million tons of that. So that means that there's 2.1 million tons of idle capacity due to the closure of some of these plants. That in itself, just the closure of that is would contribute an additional 20 billion to the GDP, which we as South Africa do not now see. because of this closure. I think what's also important to note is that in terms of revenue for Eskom, it's very about 10 billion rand revenue loss due to the fact that some of these complexes are closed. So, and that comes back to the point again, Mr. Moiberg, some of the questions would have been, but what does this mean in terms of the revenue, and if it's a lower tariff, is that not going to be counterintuitive? But it's not. I mean, clearly you can see here that because we are not using all the kilowatt hours, Eskom is actually losing out. I think that was really important on the slide. And I think also, and this will come a bit later, if you have a look at where South Africa was in terms of ferrochrome production a couple of years ago and where we are today, you will see that there's a steep decline in terms of that. Thanks, Jason. You can go to the next slide. Now, clearly here you can see, and this is just a further, expansion of, that 62 billion, GDP, and also, local, beneficiation. And you could see here from, let's say, 2015 and 2016, it actually went up, and then from there onwards, 17, 18, 19, up to 20, it all went down. And then obviously, that also had to do, there with COVID, especially around 2019, 2020, and starting up, the businesses again in 2021 and 2022. So this just shows you that that there's a very good GDP growth in terms of ferrochrome production in South Africa. Thanks, Jason. Next one. Now, I did refer to this slide, and I think we as South Africans, if one look at this slide, it actually tells the whole story about beneficiation in South Africa. So in 2021, we were the biggest ferrochrome producers in the world, and rightfully so, because we sit with 80% of the world's chrome ore. And at that stage, China was down, started actually with their conversion, and they were sitting on 5. But if you then look from 2001 all the way to 2023, where we're currently sitting, and we are, as Mr. Moiberg also said, below 30, but it's actually 23. And I unfortunately must say that if we do not get the NPA, and I'm talking about all the furnaces, so I know that some of them were now excluded, but if we do not see that, we are not competitive, and for that reason, more and more furnaces will be shut. I mean, all of us do have a responsibility. I mean, obviously, my biggest concern, and I'm sure the same as Samancor, is to make sure that we keep people in jobs. I think that's critical. But we also have got a responsibility towards our shareholders, and it's clear that any business, we are here to make responsible money, and for that reason, if we do not have certainty in terms of price, and we'll also come to that a bit later, but pricing and electricity supply and logistics, as you know, which is also a crisis in South Africa. But I mean, if we don't have certainty, the chances are good that we are going to close more and more furnaces. I mean, it's not a threat. And when we closed, the Leidenburg smelter, I personally, myself and Jason, who's my counterpart, went to many meetings where we told people that, look, if things are not going to change, unfortunately, we will have to close furnaces. And unfortunately, in that case, that happened, which was heartbreaking, because how do you tell 1,000 people that you don't have jobs anymore, which I believe is definitely not the right thing to do. But clearly from this picture, you can see that China moved from 5% up to 47%. Now, for every ton of chrome ore that we export from South Africa to China or whoever, we are exporting jobs, which I believe, again, is definitely a fundamental flaw. We can go to the next one. Thanks, Jason. So this just shows you the picture in terms of SA electricity cost increase. And so what we've done here is we've based it largely, obviously, on the coal-fired power stations in South Africa. And because also we work on a 24/7 base, the power increase from 2010 up to 2023 was more than 300%. And I mean, these are the real inputs. As you would know, there are three major components into any ferrochrome production. The first one being, electricity, and we're talking about 30% and more of your cost lies in electricity. The other one would be your reductants and ore. So that means your materials, and then the other one would be labor. So clearly, electricity plays a major role in the cost of production in terms of ferrochrome. In the same vein, and again highlighted there by Mr. Myburgh, is that the Chinese model is different. They look at the country from a national perspective, and in many cases, industries they would have been supported, and for that reason, you'll see on the slide that there's a huge difference in terms of competitiveness, and that's why, as per the previous slide, it was easy for the Chinese to move from, let's say, 5% all the way up to 47%. Thanks, Jason. We can go to the next one. So if you then have a look at what would be the benefits to us as the ferrochrome industry in South Africa if we do get the NPA. So first of all, this was also actually highlighted there by Mr. Myburgh, is that we operate our furnaces during the year, and we've got various electricity tariffs during the year as well. So our winter tariff, there's a huge spike in our winter tariffs, and because of that, if we then run our models, we do not make money during that periods. And and for that reason, I mean, currently, especially in our business, most of our ferrochrome smelters are actually now standing. So we're doing maintenance work and we get it prepared and all of that, but it doesn't make sense to run it during that time period. So what will this will do is it will give you a flat tariff right through the whole year, and by having that, you can then also, there's so much benefits in that, because you can plan your maintenances better, you can schedule better, and you can also assist. And I mean, we'll come to that as well. But I think that if you do have the NPA and it's, let's say a constant tariff, it also will assist Eskom in terms of, the way that they can plan, because we as the industry will also assist, Eskom in terms of, the electricity management, which is a big problem in South Africa, as you know. So it also will give us a certainty in terms of, the escalation over the next 6 years, and that will just make our predictions going forward also much easier. What will then be the benefits to the, South African economy and also Eskom? So obviously, first of all, the tariff is not subsidized and covers the cost of supply. I think that is very important. So that means also Eskom will have a certainty in terms of what they're getting. And I mean, if you have a look at the NPA detail, as Mr. Myburgh also expressed, is that by having that certainty and within the NPA, there are certain guidelines that Eskom will be certain of certain kilowatt hours being produced or used. So that will also give them a better way of planning. It's a take or pay, provides revenue, security there to Eskom. Again, in my view, in any business, it's better to manage the things that you know, and to have this will also just allow that. allowance for interruption to help stabilize, the national grid. So within the NPA, there's also certain rules and regulations, but it's how the customer and Eskom can jointly work together to make sure that we can manage the grid stability in a better way. And then lastly, the smelters take part in load shedding and load curtailment exactly for that same reason. So we do appreciate that because of the challenges that we are sitting currently in South Africa, there are certain times that we as industry must assist to for instance, ensure that there's no blackouts or even during high peak demands that we do assist. And I think so clearly this is a type of application that will not only assist only the smelters but also Eskom and also enlarge the whole of South Africa. Next slide, please. So this just comes back to the impact of having this NPA. So if you think about the ferrochrome industry, we've got about 15,000 direct jobs. This is now between ourselves, Merafe, Glencore, and Samancor. But I think what's very important to note here is that the multiplier here is between 7 and 8. So that means that because you've got so much people depending on ferrochrome smelting, I mean, if you think about reductants, and I mean, we'll come to that a bit later, and you think about all the contractors and suppliers and all the, the external, assistance here for smelters, you can clearly see that the multiplier is much higher. So that means that if let's say the ferrochrome industry closes down, it's not only the direct jobs, but it's the multiplier times 8. So you can see that that's quite a big, impact. I think it's also important to note that on the slide here, you'll see that at the bottom left, there are two blocks, and we use, as the ferrochrome industry, about 12 terawatt hour per year of electricity. And remember, coming back to the jobs now, supporting all these people. And then if you have a look at the aluminium industry in South Africa, and we know that because it's public knowledge that there's also an NPA for the aluminium business in South Africa. But if you have a look at how much they use, it's 11 terawatt hours per year, which is then plus minus the same. But if you have a look at the direct jobs and the indirect jobs on aluminium, then you can clearly see, I mean, it's 1,000 direct jobs, and then according to resources and public documentation, it's 3,000 indirect jobs. So now you compare let's say 4,000 for 11 terawatt versus more than 120 for 12 terawatt hours. And I think that's the importance to show here that that if you do close, I mean, when we closed one of our furnaces or complexes, smelters, the impact was most probably more than 8,000 people, and that's definitely what we must guard against. Now, if you have a look at the mining jobs, so this this is just a comparison, to show that in the chrome ore business, so that means you should know this, but I mean, we mine the ore and then we take it out and then we convert it into ferrochrome, but we are also responsible for the mining. And there you could see that according to the Minerals Council, let's say data, the conversion is about 1:3, 1:4. So this is just a clear picture of how important beneficiation is in South Africa. Thanks, Jason. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this one is just to show that an additional, on top of only the impact on us as the ferrochrome division, but I mean, you would know that we also get all our reductants, if we can, as far as possible locally. That's what we try to do, and we do support all our local, let's say, reductant producers. And if we as the ferrochrome industry fall over, then obviously the pressure is again on them as well. And you all know that to export material out of South Africa in today's world is not that easy, because of all the challenges that we also face there. So this is just to show that upstream beneficiation is critical for our a country, but also downstream beneficiation. I mean, ultimately, we would have loved to have seen all the stainless steel being produced in South Africa. That was always the first prize. And yeah, so because of all the challenges, unfortunately, we only have got, I think Columbus stainless steel. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Jason. So just in conclusion, I think it's crystal clear that South African smelting is a strategic national industry and requires competitive electricity pricing, to sustain. So SA ferrochrome industry plays a critical role that we've talked about. We've spoken about the GDP, 62 billion. We spoke about the people, direct and indirect jobs. We also didn't touch on that even, but I mean, if you think about our contribution spent on road and rail logistics, obviously, if we cannot convert chrome into ferrochrome, we will then export it. And by doing that, we will export just more and more jobs. And we all know where we sit with the unemployment in South Africa. High rate of electricity utilization, and I think that will come back to the sustainability in terms of Eskom as well, because of our baseload. I mean, that we are running 24/7, and for that reason, we are a baseload customer for Eskom, and I do believe and like to believe that that Eskom sees this as a very, very strategic partner. Then surge electricity tariffs have eroded South African global competitive advantage, and I think we talked about this in detail, and also Mr. Myburg also touched on this. So I think in short, that's it. But clearly from the ferrochrome industry, we would definitely support the NPA, and hopefully all members on the call also appreciate the role that we as the ferrochrome industry play in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulat, and actually just want to thank you for allowing yourselves to come and make a presentation. We know how you guys are. You are camera shy, but thank you for actually making time to come and actually provide some kind of insight. Before I open it up to my colleagues, I think for me, I just wanted to make a comment. It's a pity, I think, Mr. Fulat, that when you guys make a presentation like this, you only look at the ferrochrome industry and not the whole ecosystem. Because, I mean, for instance, the whole issue around stainless steel, you can't make stainless steel without chrome. And it going forward in the future to be useful if we can just talk about the whole ecosystem. Yes, you actually spoke about Columbus Stainless, but there are lots of other steel makers that could have easily migrated to South Africa. And also, at any rate, it's not just about that primary sector, but it's the industrial sector that's linked to that either is in the country or was in the country and is now missing. I mean, we all know what happened to Boksburg area. So what I'm saying is that it would have been useful, I think, and I know that you are talking for the ferrochrome industry, hence your presentation is limited to that. But I think going forward, I think it would be useful. And quite frankly, I think if it's not yourselves as the metals industry who talks to these things, who will? We all need to be educated. We all need to know the linkages between ferrochrome and the green metals that to be required into the future. That, there are certain things that you can't make other than, certain structures you can't make unless you've got stainless steel, you've got steel. And ferrochrome plays a significant part of that. So I guess what I'm saying here is that it would have been useful. I think it's something that if you can still supplement. Just give us all of these figures that we may not have around that whole ecosystem. How ferrochrome, talking with nickel and all of the ferromanganese, all of these things come together to make a particular metals ecosystem. But anyway, I'd like to invite my colleagues if they've got any particular questions. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. But I think it's important to note, I agree with you 100%, and we will be more than happy to share with whoever in terms of, the bigger picture. And it's also important to note, we are so serious about our business in South Africa. If you have a look at our plans with regards to green energy, if you think about renewable energy and what we as the industry are looking at and starting to look at how can we assist, even although we are baseload customers, we are also investing and looking into renewable energies and solar plants and all of those type of things. I'm sure that you would have seen that we've got so much faith in South Africa that we are also investing or reinvesting into other products to make South Africa better. For all of us. So I do appreciate your point, and my colleagues on the line, we will be more than willing to share all the detail with regards to stainless steel and because that's our market. So
yes,
without a problem. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd then like to invite my my colleagues, the members of the ELS, to ask questions to the presenters. And by the way, Mr. Fuller, if you need to have assistance from any of your colleagues on the call, unfortunately, they will need to be sworn in, but please feel free to indicate. I see a number of them here, but if you do need them, please indicate. They will just need to be sworn in. All right, members, any questions? Mr. Mkhize, if you can go first.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks, Mr. Ford, for the presentation. I'd just like to know that this being a matured industry, are there any efficiencies in the industry served that have been achieved such that one can look at then a reduction in electricity tariffs? In other words, you're not looking at a reduction whilst you continue with the inefficiencies. But we do appreciate the changes in technology that would render the latest technologies being more efficient. But based on what we have in terms of that efficiency, and a question that is related to what I had asked from Crome earlier on is, have you had any engagement that looked at the holistic picture? Also taking cognizance what the chair has just put forth to say, you've looked at the holistic picture as to where you could be going, some kind of being also forward-looking and giving an overview, if you have had that kind of an engagement. And then the lastly from my side, noting the huge inequalities in our country, how would you rate the ferrochrome industry's level of and contribution to transformation and bridging this equality gap, and in other words, also talking directly to issue of triple BEE, because you know the situation in the country and the situation and the issues of the outcry in terms of that gap actually widening instead of being bridged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fullard. Okay, I actually thought I wasn't going to ask you questions. I was hoping the members of the ELS would actually pose questions. But if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you pointed questions. Firstly, maybe just to feed off the issue that was raised by Mr. Mkhize around efficiencies. People might be asking themselves the question, are we supporting an inefficient industry here? Is it possible that perhaps, or rather maybe the question should be, to what extent can someone say, well, this industry is not efficient, and therefore let the other more efficient players outside of the country be the ones to beneficiate, and that's good for the for South Africa. To what extent is the electricity as a factor solely because the industry itself could be deemed to be inefficient? So that's a pointed question. So I mean, I'm looking for a more a fundamental question, a response to that. And I think linked to that, I mean, I just know that back in 1991, for instance, when I was working in this industry, we were in the first quartile in terms of cost. That the smelters that closed first were the smelters in smelters in Turkey, I think. Those were the ones that will be the first ones to shut down. What has changed? I think for me, that is the issue. If we can just maybe allude to that. Then linked to this, I think you know this, but perhaps not all of us know, but what is the percentage of electricity cost in terms of the cash costs in terms of ferrochrome production, percentage-wise? We're not looking for now just cash costs. If you get to take out the cost of the, if we had to take out the cost of the mineral itself, just looking at the cash costs, what is the percentage of what's the contribution of electricity so that we can have a feel, all of us? That's the second question. The third question for me, which is more, I think also it's a more global question. I mean, to what extent is the concept of special prices or bilateral pricing, right, in respect of these large industrial customers, to what extent is that just unique to South Africa? Or is it something, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is that, you know, when these special pricing regimes are applied for by the industrial sector, especially the metal sector, whether aluminium or ferromanganese or ferrochrome, whatever the issue might be, when these are applied for, is it only in South Africa? Or is it a global thing that says it doesn't matter where you are, there are these bilateral contracts or the special prices? Or is it just a unique issue, unique to South Africa? I'm hoping that the question is clear. So those are my broad questions to you. And of course, you can respond as indicated. You can always respond to those that we choose to respond to today. Or if you want to supplement in terms of writing, we really welcome that within the next 7 days. And then thirdly, of course, you are free to then invite your colleagues to also assist. But over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I am going to try to cover most of it. I mean, you did say that thanks for the time that you know we are spending in terms of the presentation. I can just tell you that I would be nowhere else than here today. That is how serious this is for me. So this is a great privilege for me to be doing this, and I just want to assure you that this is most probably one of the most important presentations that I had to do in my life. So just to to put you at ease in terms of that. Then I am going to ask Jason to come in some of the questions, but let's quickly talk about the first question. Efficiency increases. I just want to give you an example, and I mean I've got Amanda Magru, the Chief Operating Officer for the smelting division in alloys now, and I'm talking about, because you're asking me about technologies, and this I can share here, is that if I have a look at efficiency improvements over the last year. I'm talking about 2022. Amanda and her team has broken 54 records in terms of efficiencies. 54. That's how hard we are running. That is what we are doing every day. We stand up and we think about new concepts, new ideas. I can tell you that if you have a look at, there's a couple of KPIs that we measure, as you know. We measure tons or megawatt hours per ton. I think that's one of the most important ones for us, is how do we get our megawatt hours per ton lower because of that input going to cost. So that is a direct efficiency driver. We look at ton per ton. That means how much chrome ore do you then take to convert it into ferrochrome, because the less it is, the less electricity you use. And then we can go on and, we can talk about electrode management that makes the whole efficiency in your furnaces much better. If you think about technology that we're starting to use to measure your electrodes into your, furnace. And I mean, there's a whole division that we've now created within our business that we call CCETP, which look at, specifically at climate change. It looks at energy efficiency. It looks at a virtual power station, or and I mean, these are the things that we are driving. If you then also look about the discussion about efficiencies, we are investigating cogeneration. I mean, as you know, if you smelt, and I mean, you would know this quite well, but I mean, you've got off gases, you've got energy in your off gases that if you do not utilize it, you lose it, and then you will never be able to capture that. So for that reason, we are also looking at cogeneration. So that means putting in technology to use that off gas to actually generate electricity again. So by doing that twofold, we would then be using less electricity, first of all, and secondly also reducing our carbon footprint, which is very important for us as the ferrochrome industry, because that we are using fossil fuel as electricity, and for that reason we are also very big emitters of scope 2s. So those are just in terms of what we do. If you think about Lion Smelter, which is the biggest complex in South Africa. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was the biggest complex in the world, and it used premise technology. And even Lion Smelter, where we are now, is not even in the first quartile anymore. That's how electricity has pushed us out in terms of competitiveness. So that's just in terms of efficiency. And I mean, obviously, we've got all the plants. And what we've done is we've changed a lot of technology in terms of copper roofs and spending capital and making it better and better, electrical switch gears and all of that. So a lot of capital is being invested into the older type of equipment as well. I mean, if you think about, things like making pallets, the pallets. So we also use UG2. And then what we do is we then conglomerate fine material into a pellet, and then we also use that. And by doing that, it also changed the whole smelting philosophy. So there's so many efficiency drives that we've done over the last couple of years that makes us still running, but we are getting out of breath, and I think that's the challenge. If you then have a look at the other question in terms of the forward view, I mean, obviously what we do, and I mean, Jason is on the call here, so we do have a holistic understanding of what do we believe the growth of all the countries in the world will be. Obviously, China being the biggest one, and for us, they are also part of our biggest, let's say, off-taker of our chrome ore and also ferrochrome. And for that reason, we put all of that into our models and into our macros, and that's the way that we take a view going forward. And I mean, obviously, we as the ferrochrome industry, and I mean I speak on behalf of Samancor here, obviously we want to stay, and we want to convert it here, and for that reason, again coming back to the NPA is really important. If we talk about transformation, transformation in South Africa is extremely topical. You know that we've got our partners being Merafe, and I mean that's the way that and I'm not only talking about the scorecard. Transformation for me is not all about the scorecard. It's really making a difference, really meaning what you say. If you think about what we do, not only in terms of a tick box exercise in terms of getting a score on a triple BEE, but it's also what we are doing for our communities, which is important. I mean, if you look at the Tutuzela Care Center that we've established, what we're doing in terms of building schools, building clinics, building supporting the industry with regards to the steel bridge, steel port. There's a much bigger issue about transformation for me. I mean, it's this whole new buzzword about just transition. And how do we make sure that whenever we are not there anymore, what legacy do we leave behind? And that's got to do with training, the training of people, the upskilling of people, even outside the industry. So from a transformation perspective, it's something that's very, very, very high on your cards. I mean, if you have a look at, and not only transformation in terms of, again, ownership perspective, but also in terms of transformation with regards to black empowerment, in terms of having our things like women in mining. If you have a look at that, we are already above the industry standard. So there's a host of work that we are doing to support this whole transformation, which I say it's not about the tick box always, but it's I think it's a much bigger issue. If you then go to the next question in terms of supporting inefficiencies, I think I spoke about that. I mean, we can also submit more information in terms of what we are doing, and I'm sure, Steph, I think that you are also on the call from Samancor, but surely we as the industry will definitely submit whatever more information we need to do, specifically in that regard. If you then talk about electricity, there was the question, and it's more than 30%. So it's between 30 and 34% or whatever, roundabout there, just depends on technology. But that's the percentage of, let's say, the cost of running a smelter complex. 30% to 34% goes to that electricity pot. And remember, on the question is why did we lose this? I mean, like you said, Mr. Gomede, Mr. Ntlantla, how did we lose this competitive edge? It's because if you think about that slide that I showed, 300% increase on electricity over the last, let's say, 10 years versus a 9% based in China. I mean, then obviously you can see that there is a fundamental switch in that regard. And then on the bilateral pricing, Jason, I'm not sure if you want to just jump in there.
So yeah, I mean, just to
before you do, Jason, before you do, unfortunately, which is what I was indicating, I'll need to swear in. Before you
maybe you can cover it off if you want to. I can, whichever's easier, Mr. Gumede.
No problem.
No, it's okay to swear in. It's just a short process, if you don't mind,
okay,
so that it allows you to actually speak. So, but do you object to taking an oath?
I'm happy to confirm. I'll tell the truth. Yeah.
Okay. In that particular case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm for me the following: that you declare that the information you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth as you know it.
Confirm that it will be the truth and the whole truth as I know it.
Thank you. For the record, Jason, if you can just state your name, the organization, your organization, and your designation, please.
Yeah, so my name's Jason Klook. I work for Glencore International in Switzerland, and I'm the head of marketing for ferroalloys for Glencore.
Thank you. Then you can now proceed. Thank you. Perfect.
So yeah, maybe just to touch on the bilateral agreements, and the reason maybe I'm more qualified than Jaap is because I spend a lot of time obviously traveling around the world, selling product and meeting with different customers and other operators in the ferrochrome industry. That sadly we have to sell chrome ore to from South Africa because of the fact that we're less competitive. PPAs in general are very common across the world. And if you want to focus on the ferroalloys industry in general, I can give multiple examples and specifically in ferrochrome. But these bilateral agreements for baseload energy consumers are very commonplace. In the European market, to give you an idea, it's actually a liquid market where PPAs are entered into between different power producers and consumers, and then wheeled over the grid to be delivered. Within Glencore, we have multiple examples of this, and within the ferrochrome industry, a good example of this would be Outokumpu in Finland, who operate ferrochrome furnaces there, as well as there are ferrochrome furnaces that operate in Albania that buy off the European grid and are able to enter into PPAs. That process is a lot, let's say, more developed and more of an open market approach, but it's very common to have PPAs in Europe. If we go to Asia, it is also common to have bilateral agreements, not only in China, but in other parts of Asia. There was a comment earlier in the call about the manganese industry. I think it's common knowledge that most of the manganese smelters that shut down in South Africa have been replaced by smelters owned by South African companies in Malaysia in a place called Sakura. And the attraction of Sakura is that they were offering, and I don't have the exact details because they're confidential, but from reading annual reports of the companies that own them, our belief is that the PPAs there are in the order of 20 years for a very low tariff for green power, and that was the attraction to go and build plants there. So, is this commonplace? Absolutely. I would even argue that I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but the South African setup of obviously a single power supplier and a national regulator, almost makes it more complicated in South Africa than what you would expect in other parts of the world. That is what it is, and we're happy to go through the process. But it's very uncommon for a smelter to operate without a PPA, given how important energy is to the underlying cost. So it's to operate a business where in some instances 30, 40, 50% of your power of your cost is coming from power without any certainty of that price is very challenging. So most smelters globally are fixing their power or a large chunk of their power for an extended period of time. And I'll give you one example. Within our portfolio, we have an asset that has a very high power cost. It's not in the ferrochrome industry, but we actually run a portfolio approach where we run multiple PPAs at the same time. So we'll have a 10-year PPA, a 6-year PPA, a 5-year, and then a 2-year, and that will be for different portions of your power cost, so that you can continue renewing different periods, and it gives you that, let's say, blended approach as the world evolves. So it's very commonplace, and I think to some extent the question is maybe due is South Africa had very attractive power for a long time, and that's maybe why it was never really a necessity. But I think going forward for these type of industries, it's very difficult to firstly invest, but secondly to have any security of operation without it. And, we may be entering into a 6-year agreement here, but I think, Yapi, you will agree the intention here is not to not have a PPA after the 6 years, but it's to just continuously be renewing and having that ongoing certainty for these type of operations. I'm not sure if that's comprehensive.
Extremely.
Thanks,
and yeah, unless you want to add, Yapi, please proceed.
No, thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. No, just want to thank yourselves. I don't see any further question from my colleagues, but I just honestly just like to invite further inputs from yourselves going forward. From the whole industry. I mean, firstly, it would be useful to get the material that, if it's available for sharing, the material that Jason was talking to, if that can be shared, so that the members, at least, we are all aligned in terms of how the operations, and to see whether, and I guess the issue here is about whether South Africa wants to play in this space or not, but and that's unfortunately a policy question. But in respect of what we are facing today, in terms of making a decision on the NPA, we'd really appreciate any material that could assist us as the regulator to make that decision. But I have to say, the metals industry has to start talking in South Africa. Educate your relevance, your importance, not only in the mining side. I know the mining guys are very, very, they are very vocal, but the beneficiaries of those metals and the fabricators are unfortunately very quiet. So it would be very useful, colleagues, that if you can, going forward, I would really invite you to participate further in any of the engagements that NESA would have going forward. Thank you on behalf of
thank
NESA.
you. Thank you. I think it would just be, I think in closing, Mr. Chairperson, I think it would be unfair not to mention that if I have a look at how long we've been talking about the NPA and the inputs from both NERSA and Eskom, and I must say to the whole platform is that the way that we engaged with NERSA, yourselves, and also with Eskom, it was always extremely professional, very to the point, and all of us have just got one goal, and that is SA Inc. And that is, in my view, beneficiation. And I can promise you that I personally had many conversations and presentations, myself and Jason actually, with the DTIC, with the DMRE, with all the leaders in South Africa. It's not that they don't know about our challenges. Obviously, we are speaking to you because you are supplying electricity. But I mean, it's not only about electricity. It's about the bigger conversation, as you say, Mr. Chairperson, in terms of making this industry work in South Africa. I mean, it is all of us' responsibility that we must create jobs in South Africa. That's our aim. And that should be the biggest focus that we should have. So I just wanted to close off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of NESA, I'd like to thank you and your colleagues, even those who are joining us from Switzerland. The beauty with this platform, it can be prohibitive for others that can't sustain, don't have, and this is unfortunate. The truth about South Africa, we're not all equal, and therefore it might not be as accessible to some of the people that need to actually hear these messages in South Africa. But it's good that we can actually reach out as broadly as we are. Thank you. I'd like to thank the industry for this. If we can then now, yes, Yapi?
Sorry, Mr. Chairperson. I just want to know, I mean, obviously I did speak on behalf of the ferrochrome industry, but some of the questions that were posed to me, I expressed my experience in terms of Glencore-Merafe. So I'm not sure if the colleagues of Samancor wants to say anything, or I'm not sure if that would be appropriate.
As indicated, if you can invite anybody, and if there's any further input, we just need to swear people in. Unfortunately, our processes are such that we do need to have somebody speaking under oath. But nonetheless, anybody from Samancor is actually welcome to if they wanted to add anything in respect of what you've said. But we also welcome anything in writing. In the next 7 days, we will really welcome any additional input. You know the gist of the questions and basically the reasons why we are asking them, and therefore anything that can support that would definitely be welcome. But I think perhaps it is an opportunity that we then step off from the industry and then allow a very important stakeholder, and firstly just to apologize if there was a miscommunication between ourselves and NUMSA. But can I then maybe just invite Ms. Pagamile Hlubi Majola to maybe switch on her camera? And you are on mute, ma'am? Okay, you've unmuted yourself. Thank you. And firstly, as I've indicated, apologies for any miscommunication. But before we start any communication, can I then start by asking you, would you object to taking an oath or an affirmation?
Oh, I can take an oath.
Thank you. In that case, kindly raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you solemnly declare that the information or the evidence that you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth as you know it?
All information I will be giving is the truth, the whole truth as I know it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And for the record, just if you can just kindly state your name, the organization you are representing today, and your designation in it, please.
Yes, indeed. First of all, let me just begin by saying my name is Pagamile Hlubi Majola. I'm the NUMSA national spokesperson. And I want to really appreciate, Chairperson, the fact that you've allowed us to engage in this important issue. I myself would also like to apologize. I realized that my understanding of when I was applying, or when we were applying on behalf of NUMSA to participate, our understanding of participating is, I suppose we needed to be more explicit in our communication. So I am also taking responsibility for that. So I do apologize, but at the same time, I really, really appreciate the fact that you have agreed to give us this opportunity. Okay. I also to just say, must I proceed or?
No. I was going to say, can we then give you an opportunity to proceed and really, we'll hopefully going forward, we'll sort out all of these mishaps that won't happen. We'll communicate effectively, both of us. But we'd like to give you an opportunity to present. I don't know whether you're making a presentation or just an oral input, ma'am.
Really an oral input. In fact, I'd already sent copy to I've written it. It's a written input, but yes, it's not a presentation to the extent that was given by the other gentleman who presented earlier.
That's fine, ma'am. You are given. Ordinarily, we normally give 20 minutes, but today we had accommodated and allowed 40 just because there was supposed to just be 2. But if we can maybe lean on the side of 20 minutes, we'll really appreciate that. But over to you, ma'am.
Oh, it's going to be very brief. As I said, first of all, as I want to thank NERSA for this opportunity, for the fact that they've given us the chance to address them on this issue. I also want to thank the speakers that spoke before us. In particular, I would like to highlight the presentation that was done by Mr. Yapi Fullard of Glencore. As NUMSA, we definitely align ourselves with the presentation that he gave, the details that he gave, particularly around the impact of the ferrochrome industry as a whole in terms of its contribution to the GDP, its contribution to job creation, and its contribution to developing the South African economy. And this is actually the reason why we felt it was important that NUMSA raises its voice directly to NERSA on this issue. NUMSA is the largest trade union in South Africa and Southern Africa. We represent over 300,000 metal workers and their families. And we represent members at Rustenburg Smelter, Wonderkop Smelter, Bos and Boshoek Smelter. And we are making the submission in support of the application which was made by Mr. Fullard on behalf of the ferrochrome industry, but Glencore in particular, because it was really our members at Glencore that pushed us to participate in this process, because there is so much to lose. And we cannot stress the importance of this process in terms of actually dealing with that issue. There are jobs and livelihoods on the line as a result of this process. And this is why we felt we have to participate in this process. On the 11th of August, NUMSA marched to the Rustenburg municipality to hand over a memorandum of demands to the municipality over its plans to charge Glencore smelters a surcharge for electricity. All NUMSA members marched to demand that the municipality withdraw its proposal to charge Glencore smelters an additional surcharge over and above the tariff that you yourselves as NERSA are going to decide on at this point. This has become a burning issue because if the municipality proceeds, it would have a major impact. The ferrochrome industry, as highlighted by Mr. Fullard, has played a major role in job creation. In our input, we were just talking about the smelters that are in Rustenburg, where at least 1,050 direct jobs would be affected because, as you heard from the presentation, they cannot afford an excessive tariff. If they were to be, if a high tariff were to be imposed on them, it would basically mean that they would have to take a decision to move their operations out of Rustenburg, probably out of South Africa. And that would be a devastating decision, not just for Rustenburg as a community, but also for South Africa as a whole. And this is why NUMSA is involved. I'm sure the NERSA board is asking itself, why on earth would a trade union side with capital? Well, we will side with capital if our interests are aligned. And in this instance, our interests are definitely aligned. When we marched to the Rustenburg municipality, it wasn't just NUMSA members who marched, also management of Glencore marched. And that's because there are human beings behind the numbers given by the CEO. He talks about 15,000 direct jobs that would be lost in the ferrochrome industry, and the contribution of I think the number he mentioned was 65,000. I could be wrong in terms of the value chain and those that would be affected. And this is really a fundamental issue for us. You have to understand that in this country we are operating from a situation where we've got 34% unemployment, more than 40% expanded unemployment. When you look at Rustenburg, just Rustenburg as a whole, Rustenburg is not exactly a big town. It's not like some of the metros like Johannesburg or the Western Cape. It's a small town. And the fact that you have these smelters that exist in Rustenburg, it creates really meaningful jobs for the people there. There are not a lot of companies that are going to absorb those workers once those smelters close down. So what would effectively be happening is that if Glencore is forced to pay an extremely high tariff, and they then say they can't afford it, then unfortunately we are basically relegating hundreds of people, thousands of people and their families to the sea of unemployment that is growing every day in South Africa. And as NUMSA, we feel very strongly that it is absolutely everybody's responsibility to play a role in job creation and in the protection of jobs in this country. And you heard from the CEO, he's here, he made a detailed presentation because for him, this is that serious. For us, it is that serious. If our members lose these jobs, there is no plan B. There is no company that's going to absorb them. These are going to be men and women who will suffer from extreme levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Their children will also suffer. So this entire process is extremely important because you're not just talking about numbers here. We're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with the fact that there are human beings who would be directly affected by the decisions taken here. And I really cannot stress this enough. And why for us this has become even more important is because unfortunately the municipality this week, after they ignored us, we had initially written to them, they ignored us when we wrote to them. So we were forced to march. Of course, we didn't want to march, but we were forced to march to get their attention. This week, they responded to say that they would not withdraw the proposal to impose a surcharge on Glencore. And what we understand is that that surcharge is approximately 6.1 million a month. Now, it is deeply disappointing for us that the Rustenburg municipality does not understand the depth and the seriousness of the decision that they've taken and the dire impact that this will have on Rustenburg as a whole. It is sad for us that they do not see the benefit that as a municipality they would reap from actually not imposing that surcharge. And the reason why this has become extremely frustrating is because we are constantly being exposed to leaders in government at various levels, whether it's at local municipality or, you know, at local governments, or even in the state as a whole, at national level, where we hear people say they claim they care about the working class. They claim they care about job creation. But when they are given an opportunity to take progressive decisions and to intervene directly to mitigate against further job losses, they simply close their eyes and close their ears and pretend it doesn't affect them. It is deeply disappointing for us that the Rustenburg municipality does not see this as a burning, crucial issue that they should show leadership on and that they should intervene on in a progressive way. And as NUMSA, we are now calling on you as NERSA to take that role, to take the role of being an entity that is going to take a progressive decision in the interests of workers at Glencore, but also in the interests of this country as a whole in terms of the role that these companies play in the growth of the economy and in job creation. And this is why, as NUMSA, we have said, even in the written input, which I shared with Mr. Mabunda, which of course I'm sure he will hand over to yourselves, we really are asking that NERSA must play its role in helping us to save jobs and to defend jobs. That is our input as NUMSA. We are asking that when you are looking at this application, that you do not do so in isolation, that you do this knowing what your responsibilities are as a state-owned agency part of whose mandate is to develop this country and to grow jobs. And let that play as a very important factor when you are making that decision. And on that note, that's where I'd like to end our presentation and our input as NUMSA. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much, Madam. Delivered with the passion as always. Like to then invite the members of the committee, members of the panel, to pose any questions or to make comments as you see fit. Members, I invite your inputs. Any comments from yourselves, members? I see thumbs up from Mr. Mkhize. I guess, Madam Majola, it's very difficult to respond to a well-presented argument with passion that you are, and it comes from the heart. And I guess and the only snag with the regulators that we're always guided by the law, and we are driven also by applications. So, for instance, the Rustenburg one, we will always await an application, but an application that is compliant. So, in this particular case, where in Rustenburg, the supplier to a smelter is if the supplier to the smelter is a municipality, we're then expecting an application from the municipality. So that does have its own challenges. So we can't, unfortunately, act outside of that process. So we get an application first and we'll consider the application. And we'll consider the application in terms of all of the aspects that you've raised. Again, we have got objects of the Act that we're giving effect to, and clearly a number of those issues are actually included there. So that's all we can just say, and say thank you for your input, and I can assure you it will be considered.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for allowing me to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And hopefully going forward, you will still participate, and we will hopefully with time just get to improve our communications with yourself, so that it's not just because you are not recognized, but you are recognized as going to be an observer. But clearly there was a miscommunication there. No, thank you, ma'am, on behalf of NERSA. All right, members, this brings us to the end of the presentations today that were made. Don't think there is a need for an applicant, unless, of course, Mr. Marburg, you actually indicate to the contrary. If there are any points that you would like to, any rebuttals, any additions, we normally afford the applicant an opportunity for a response. Mr. Marburg, anything else?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think just appreciation again to NERSA, and I think appreciation also to the industry and Mr. Fullard, and I know Stefan Sittard has just joined again as well. They are the best positioned to talk about the industry, and hence we really just gave a high level view. I'd just like to supplement something that Jason indicated with regard to, is South Africa unique with regard to NPAs, and he did cover the ferrochrome industry, but I can also validate across many other industries and across the globe, there are various mechanisms that are in place, with regard to tax breaks, other mechanisms versus instead of just the electricity consumer. So yeah, just to agree with Jason and supplement that there are other mechanisms as well. But yeah, with that, Chair, and I was remiss of me also just to acknowledge my team that are also online, and two in particular, Damesh Bana and Jenny Bartman, who were instrumental. And then I think just to acknowledge both the Glencore-Merafe and the Samancor teams, because I think, as Mr. Fullard did reflect and indicate, I think the discussions and engagements were drawn out to find a meaningful and solution that we believe does work and will sustain as well. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think there are one or two little items that I think we can just put in writing, and then I think just in passing also, to NERSA and your team that works, Boiswa, Kwena, Brian, Samson, etc. Wonderful to work with them. I think we've built a relationship over a period now with them, and I think the engagements with them are always fruitful, and we have open and free discussions with them as well. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you very, very much. I'm not going to spoil it by lengthening the conversations today. I think this brings us to a logical end to our public hearing today. I'd like to thank all the participants, those that were active in terms of communication, and also for those people that came on board, listened, and also to thank people that called from as far as Switzerland. We thank you for your participation, and any further inputs in this would really be welcome. Just to the industry, we really beg you to honestly participate in our processes, pricing discussions, the electricity regulation amendment bill, because it affects you. But it doesn't just affect you, but you are the custodian of the investments, or you are the custodian of jobs that's going to be created in South Africa. If you guys don't speak, unfortunately, it's not all of us that understand the industry as well as you do, and the interlinkages in everything else, whether it's the green economy that we are trying to build going forward. You are best suited to actually deliver that message. We really, really urge you to participate further in all of the engagements that NERSA is going to be embarking on going forward, especially in the pricing review, because that is going to touch you and touch the industry in general and the people of South Africa broadly. And you can be the voice for those people that can be. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair, members,
Thank you,
all attendees.
Chairperson
Cheers.
and members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members. Thank you, everyone.
Apologies, Chair, but my video was stuck and I had to change the tire. Thank you.
As long as you are safe, Mr. Pokula, as long as you are safe, half the time the problem with South Africa is